Everybody, quick message, fun message. You guys ready? Little video. Here's my favorite principle. And it's something I'm learning right now, something I'm going through. I knew it, but I didn't know necessarily how to live it out in my life as well as I kind of understood it on a blackboard. It's the principle of growth. How to go from mom and pop to a company to a corporation. And no, not all corporations are evil. Not all corporations are bad. It's ridiculous to even think that. Just because something's big, and as you get bigger, sometimes you do find corruption and you find problems, doesn't mean the concept of having success or making money is bad. That's stupid. There's nothing wrong with being successful and having a large whatever. Whether that's family, ministry, financial, institution, it doesn't make a difference. Big isn't necessarily bad. Let's pursue something that is fantastic. And not just say, well, if it gets big, it gets bad. So let's just not even, consider that. Let's not pursue that great thing. Let's just settle. And in my life right now, I'm trying to break forward from kind of the medium level to the large level, so to speak. I've been small, I've been medium, and now I'm trying to be a large, if you'll follow my analogy. And so many times in the last several years, I've seen a lot of people who just simply cannot do this. And it's been a very painful experience for me in lots of different ways, because people have the success, they have the growth, they're ready to go from mom and pop to a company to a corporation. And most of the time recently what I've been in is groups that were ready to go from medium to large. They were ready to go from company to corp, but they just didn't know how. They thought they knew how, but they didn't have a clue. And in not knowing how to do it, they actually sabotaged themselves and the people around them, because they abandoned what made them great to settle for what would make them big. And let me discuss that just very openly with you, and let me just put a really nice framework on it, okay? I'm going to use a simple example. If me and Teresa and the kids were to open up Broussard's restaurant tomorrow, okay? We had a great success in our local community. We worked hard, and we were making a good living, and everything was cool. And then all of a sudden we got approached by In-N-Out Burger. And we said, oh, okay, In-N-Out Burger wants to buy 5 franchises, if that's how that works, and put us out there. I'm not exactly sure how In-N-Out Burger would do that, but we'll go with my analogy. Why not? So they want to put 5 Broussard, delicatessens out there. And we think, wonderful. So what does our mindset go from? It goes from doing what we love, doing it well, doing it with excellence, and doing it with passion, to production. It goes to manufacturing. It goes to making something and getting it off the ground as quickly as possible so that it's profitable. Because until it's off the ground and making money, it's just costing money. And we're going to be in the lurch. And that original restaurant, that original location, is going to have to fund the rest of it, or take a loan, and then all of a sudden you're making loan payments that are digging into your comfort zone and your finances. And this is how things a lot of times grow. And it's absolutely necessary at that time to focus on something you haven't focused on, which is mass production and manufacturing. Absolutely. No questions asked. But what I see most faith communities, families, and financial institutions or businesses do is they abandon their core to obtain productivity. Put it like this. I'm going to put the family twist on it. You got a mom and a dad. Well, really, you got a husband and a wife. They love each other. They're passionate about each other. Their relationship works. They have kids. Now, all of a sudden, they need to find a way to be intimate with one another, but also care for and love and take care of and be parentally intimate with their children. It can be hard. That's why you see so many parents who they basically become roommates once they start having kids, and then they get divorced whenever the kids are out of the house, because their whole marriage became about kids. And the husband's sitting there, because the majority of divorces now are filed by the wife, and the wife's just waiting. It's like a time bomb. Can't wait to get out of the relationship, because the husband checked out a decade or so ago because he didn't know how to be intimate with her and be parentally intimate with his kids. He didn't know how to keep his core and take care of his production, take care of his manufacturing. Look at churches. Churches all the time, they get bigger and they grow. Remember, we're talking about finances, faith, and family, and faith in order right there. All of a sudden they're growing, they're doing great. They want to set up a new campus, or they want to launch new ministries, or they want to do new things. But it's hard to do new things and keep a very tight-knit, intimate circle of friends who you trust, who you do ministry with. And so you kind of get in this in-between phase. And what most pastors and parents and progenitors of business, or entrepreneurs, to keep my P's alive in there, what they do is they settle for a less intimate relationship, or, a less close-knit group, or a less excellent version of whatever made them great to begin with, so they can have their production. They compromise in the core. They compromise their spouse and their love for their spouse. They compromise their faith community and their relationships therein with the people who are closest to them, who they trust, who they need. They compromise their products, and they compromise their creativity and their new product lines and research and development, all to be more productive. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you owned a BlackBerry? They make a great case study. They had the market absolutely cornered for 10 years, maybe a little more, maybe a little less, on smartphones, called PDAs back then, but there was no other product that you were interested in. Everybody had a BlackBerry. And then whenever iPhone came out and Android came out, all of a sudden BlackBerry is completely obsolete. So what did they do? They came out with the BlackBerry Torch. It was just another BlackBerry. It still had that goofy little roller ball. You know what I'm talking about, that roller ball? A little ball on it that you and then the ball would stick and it wouldn't work, and you're thinking, I hate this ball. I hate this ball. BlackBerry was a terrible product in comparison to the very vivid and easy to control touchscreens of the other products. And they still didn't change. They made the Torch. It was the same stinking product. It was a little bit more innovative, but it was very, very similar to the original. It had nothing to do, or couldn't even hold a torch to comparison of the other people in its genre of technology. It just abandoned all research and development and said, well, we're just going to keep doing what we're doing, and people will buy it because it's a BlackBerry. People, just abandon coming up with new recipes, and abandon your specials, and abandon your customer service. People will come to the Broussard's Deli because it's a Broussard's Deli. Hey man, look, just abandon your intimacy, abandon your kindness, abandon your love and your friendship and your familial community. People will come to our church because it's called whatever the church's name is. When you do that, you will have production, but it won't work, because there's a very simple principle for growth that I'm trying to learn. And in my research and trying to learn it, I found it to be true in business, found it to be true in family, found it to be true in finances. In faith communities. So finances, faith, and family. I found it to be true in all three. You ready for what it is? I just got finished listening to an hour and 15 minutes inside the minds of geniuses just recently in doing this research. They've got 500 employees, 200 interns, and 2,000 students. It's a lot of people, okay? It is one of the most cutting-edge nonprofit corporations in the world, if not in modern history, okay? You know what they said their core was? You know what they said their secret was? They're sitting there at what they call a leader's advance, and they're saying the number one thing. We can sit up here and give you all kinds of TED Talks and speeches. We can do that till we're blue in the face. You know what the number one thing is that sustains, drives, and completes what we're doing here? Is intimacy with our team. Now, granted, you got to pick who you're intimate with. You can't just have a team of, half your group, unless your group's really small. But he said the intimacy in that team, not just saying the word team, but time and space. Now they got people, the guy that runs it, the guy that's under him, the guy that's under the girl that's under them. Oh yeah, they're all over the country. They're all over the world, quite literally, all the time. I follow them all on Facebook. They literally are traveling the world every week in different directions, but they never, ever compromise what made them great to begin with, which is what they call covenant relationship. It's the closeness, the family, the transparency that equals vulnerability, that equals intimacy, that brings life. That's what they never, ever, ever abandon. So let me break it down for you. If all you ever want to do is reproduce what you've always made and just do it in the coolest way that somebody else can do what you do. So I'm going to trust you with my new campus of my church. I'm going to trust you with the new location of my restaurant. I'm going to trust you with the new member of my family and the Broussard name, and I'm going to trust you. But I'm going to watch you like a hawk. I'm going to micromanage you, or even worse, I'm just going to assume you're going to do right, and I won't have any relationship with you at all, and I'll just throw you to the wolves if you do wrong, or just ignore it when you do wrong and act like it didn't happen because I don't want to deal with it, because I can't deal with failure, and I consider you a failure if you don't do what I would do in the situation. All of these things are terrible. If we do that, If we become so overtly focused on production and manufacturing, we will absolutely lose our core. And all we're doing is having intercourse. We're going through the motions, but there's no chance whatsoever of producing life. Okay? Until you take off, and this is a little crass, the condom of control, you'll never get to life. Okay, follow me. There's intercourse right here. There's control, and there's life. If you take off the control, you have a bridge there now. You can reach. But this is no longer intercourse because intercourse is defined by that control. Now you have intimacy. And intimacy is so much more dynamic and powerful and beautiful and scary. Okay, because intimacy, you can't even get to intimacy. Let's do it up here. Life, you have intimacy. But what do you have before you get to intimacy? You got to have vulnerability and transparency. Right there. Transparency, vulnerability, intimacy, life. Being transparent with your work team or with your ministry team or with your spouse can be, or your kids can be horrifying. It can be horrifying. You know, what do you really think? I ask my kids these questions and it is so scary. You know, I'll ask them like, well, you know, what's something daddy could work on? And a lot of times, man, they'll say nothing. I love it. And sometimes they'll say some stuff and I'm like, God. Oh, that hurts. And I'll tell them, I know I need to work on that. I'm sorry. And I mean, it is just gut wrenching. And other times it's wonderful. And they tell you things and you're like, I'm doing it. Like, I'm making this happen. I'm giving my kids this thing and this is wonderful. But either way, I had to be transparent and ask them to be transparent. And when we both are, we get vulnerable with one another. And it hurts or it's wonderful, but it emotionally evokes thought and the possibility of change. These are all the things that make you vulnerable. And then you go from that to intimacy. I dare you to look at your kids, look at your coworkers, look at your spouse, look at your church family, and ask them intimate questions, transparent questions. And if you can get transparency out of them, if you've got a relationship like that, if you haven't so squandered their hopes and dreams and passions that you can actually get transparency out of them, then what happens is, and it's beautiful, it's so beautiful, you get vulnerability and they tell you the truth, good, bad, or in between. And then from there, if you both choose again and you set the tone, you get intimacy. That's where all the good stuff is, right? That's where life is. Transparency, vulnerability, intimacy, life. You put the condom of control in there, you have no real transparency or vulnerability. You just have intercourse, control, and you don't even know what's on the other side of it. You'd have to fumble into or make an accident or be part of the 2% of the time that birth control doesn't work to find life. And sometimes God bursts through that door. I'm not going to lie to you. Sometimes success will burst through that door. Sometimes that 2% works and things just work out for your family. And that's great. I'm happy for you. But for the other 98% of the time, control and fear, which is what control is based on, are going to absolutely sterilize your faith, your family, your financial institution. It's going to make it to where there is no possibility for life. This is a very simple, standard principle. It's a spiritual principle, but it works. It always do. And that's why it works in business. It's why it works in family. It's why it works everywhere, because all spiritual principles always do. You read all the managerial books you want. You can read them all. You can write them all. At the end of the day, if you will not ask honest questions, ask your clientele, ask your employees, ask your partners in your business, your coworkers, ask them. Get transparency so that you can build on that and say, I don't know if we can take that risk right now. I don't know if I'm ready for that. I don't think we should do that. I appreciate what you're saying, but I think that you're wrong for this, that, and this reason. What do you think? And you have a real conversation, not just, what do you think? Okay, this is wrong. Or what do you think? Okay, I think that's right. I'll just deal with it. But an actual ebb and flow inside of vulnerability, what you will produce is intimacy with that person. You can't help it. And once you have intimacy, my friend, if you will pursue it, you will have life. And that's where all the good stuff is. If BlackBerry would have stopped for 5 seconds and asked anybody on the street, and I'm sure they did, but they didn't listen to them, what do you want out of a BlackBerry? 90% of people would have said nothing. I don't want anything to do with a BlackBerry. But the 10% that would have said something, the 10% who you could trust as a focus group would say, I like how BlackBerry had BlackBerry Messenger, and I like how they had, on the different apps before anybody knew what an app was. Tons of doctors and stuff couldn't even switch from BlackBerry. They had to hold on to BlackBerry for years because Apple and Android did not have doctoral apps. They didn't have physicians' apps. They could have just ran with physicians. How many doctors are there in this country, and how much money do they have? And hospitals, they could have just said, you know what? We've lost so much, but you know what we're going to do? Right now, in order to stay afloat, we are going to attack aggressively the physicians market. And we're going to own that because they can't go anywhere else yet. Let's be the leader in that market, and that'll help us with productivity. That'll help us eventually be able to come after the rest of the market. But instead, what they did was they just said, we're going to rehash the same old thing in a new way. That's not being intuitive or being sensitive to what the needs are, the abilities are. You cannot tell me in all the money that company had, they could not possibly have a single engineer on staff, a single creative mind that had a better idea than the BlackBerry torch. I'm not going to believe that. I'm sorry, I'm just not. If they did, then they weren't being very wise to begin with. They had to have better. They're BlackBerry. They were great. But they settled for that, and they quit listening to their core. They quit listening to that voice. And to put a very nice spiritual bow tie on this, very long video, I know, I appreciate you listening if you did. Whenever, and this is a spiritual concept, okay, but it does play, I promise you. Abraham of Ur has a friendship so much with Jehovah, the God of the Hebrew Bible. And this God tells him, hey, Abraham, go sacrifice your son Isaac that I promised to you. And Abraham says, oh, okay. Wakes up the next morning, takes off. Now, he heard the directive of his deity. He heard his God, Jehovah, God, tell him to go do these things. He gets up, he takes the boy, he takes off. They get to the mountain. He's ready to sacrifice the boy, who is probably a tween at this point, we estimate. And at the last possible second, God speaks again. Stop. How many Isaacs have we sacrificed, whether it be business, family, church, whatever, faith, family, or finance? How many have we sacrificed because we heard the directive, but we didn't keep our ears open for the audible? Can you imagine if we're playing basketball together and I throw it to Shaq, and Shaq's on me and you, we're playing 3-on-3. We throw it to Shaq because he's Shaq. Shaq's 7'1", he's 300 pounds. He's going to turn around and dunk on 99% of the population of the planet ever. We're in great shape. We just threw it to Shaq, okay? But then all three players go guard Shaq, and he can't even move. You think Shaq's just supposed to we call to play, Shaq, shoot the ball? Or do you think he should look at us and go, oh, you're wide open, I will throw you the ball? When we stop listening for the audible, when we stop listening for the redirect, when we stop being intimate with our core and the ebb and the flow and the change that comes with relationship and business, the best stockbrokers in the world are the guys who know how to ride the waves. They see what's coming down the path and they make decisions before it becomes crucial for them to do so. They're not just managing accounts, they're managing the market. You understand? It's a dynamic that is super amazing and exciting. It's not just saying, well, we call to play, shoot the ball. Look at, if you want to talk about football, we'll hand the ball to our best running back, LSU, Leonard Fournette. We're going to give him the ball. And you get up to the line of scrimmage and you see that every single defender has figured out the play and they're all going to defend it and there's nothing we can do to stop it. Well, let's just do it anyway. That will never work. LSU proved that. It won't work. Not a lot. Or you can look at the situation, have intimacy on your team with your coach, your quarterback, your receivers, your linemen, and everybody knows how to make an audible. Everybody knows how to ebb and flow and transition. And when you allow, because you have that intimacy, you can bring life. You can make great plays. You can come up with new products. You can keep your quality without losing it because you've now got quantity. You can have intimacy with your spouse even though you've got a ton of kids. You can have a church or a ministry or a nonprofit that does feel like family even though it's very big. These things are possible, but you have to honor the concept and the principle of intimacy and growth. not just intercourse and production. I hope this is helpful. It's long, but I hope it's helpful. Love you guys.